Welcome to CED Office Hour Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Central State University's Community and Economic Development Team, also known as CED, the CED Office Hour Live show, where we talk about all things community and economic development. And before we get started in our topic for today, I always like to give a baseline definition of what community and economic development is. But before that, we have some other members on our CED team present. Can you all give a quick introduction of yourselves?
Yeah, hi. My name is Eric Smith, Program Extension Associate with the Community Economic Development Unit here at Central State University. Just really glad to be here to learn from this conversation. It's been a fantastic series. Thank you for setting us up for this, Amber.
And I'm Ambrose Moses, Extension Educator with Central State University in the CED program area. And my territory is Southwest Ohio, primarily Franklin County. And I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Hello, my name is Lisa Lawrence. I'm also an extension educator and part of the CED team, and I'm excited and Tamaya to hear your story today. Thank you, Amber.
And thank you. And I'm Amber Twitty. I'm in the southern region of Ohio. My primary area is Hamilton County, which houses Cincinnati, Ohio. So like I said, we always like to give a base definition of CED, what community and economic development is, because like diversity, it's a small phrase, 1 or 2 words. However, it really has a big impact, right? And you can talk to 5 different people and get 5 different definitions. So we like to give a definition to show kind of where our baseline is in that space. So community and economic development looks at how we live, work, play, thrive, and navigate through all those spaces. And it's a spectrum of activities. One end of the spectrum is the economic development side. So that's like building affordable housing, building office buildings, bike paths, highways, parks, just the physical infrastructure of a community or a city, or however you want to define the area in which you live. The other end of the spectrum is the human capital development, people development, professional development, personal development, social service supports, helping people move towards self-sufficiency, just empowerment and accessing to resources. And then the middle tends to be those resources, right? And those are the businesses and agencies and organizations that connect the physical infrastructure with the people. And that is what community and economic development encompasses. Now, as CED professionals, just like the diversity or interdisciplinariness of CED, we all have different backgrounds and subject matter expertise areas. And we look at that whole CED system like a systems engineer and say, based on our bandwidth, our available resources, and our expertise in the needs of the community or individuals or organizations, how can we plug and play to make that system better, right? And so here on the CED team, we have focused most of our time on the people development and the business development. So that center connector as well as the end cap of people. And we are slowly moving as we expand our bandwidth to get more into more of the economic development side as well. As CED professionals within Extension, our goal is to work with you, with organizations. We partner, we collaborate, we teach, we educate, provide technical assistance. But our job is to work our way out of a job, right? And so it's to empower you to get you to your next level, to level you up, to get to your goals, to help the organization operate better, whatever that goal or initiative may be. And then because we gave you that tools, you don't need us specifically for that thing anymore. But we want to be your go-to people. So once you come up with your next idea, your next initiative, then you're calling us to help with that next thing. So we keep coming back. So I always like to tell people in training, we're that marriage you want to be in, right? We're not just one-off. We're stuck with us, right? And so because it's a relationship, it's a collaboration, and it's always something going on. So that just kind of gives you a baseline definition. So technically, anybody that exists has some aspect in CED, right? Whether they know it or not, because it touches on everything. So today, we're continuing our series on women in reentry. And reentry is one of the areas that that we done programming in. And April was dubbed as Second Chance Month. But I know more than 4 or 5 awesome women in the reentry space. And so I wanted to highlight all the great things that are being done. They are change makers. They're changing the trajectories, even how the communities are served, whether it's on policies, whether it's practice, just working with individuals, even changing their mindset and how they think so they can be leveled up, right? And so Tamaya Dennard is no exception to that rule. I always look up to her. She's done excellent work over the last 20 or 30 years. She has worked in private sector, nonprofit, public sector, right? And is a living testimony of a lot of the things that she does, right? She's a success in living color. And so I could easily go on and on and on about Tamaya. But I'm not going to shake your storm because everybody knows I can talk. So I am going to turn it over to Miss Tamaya Dennard, who is the site director of the Cincinnati office of the Center for Employment Opportunities, aka the CEO, right? And it's a national nonprofit organization, and she's been doing great things since in that position. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Tamaya, and just kind of start out with your journey, how you even got to where you are now, and some of the cool projects and initiatives that you worked on. Even I can't remember the name of the organization, but we talked the other day. I'm bad with names, but in Covington, but the nonprofits, and it was like the ideation, creation stuff. Because I participated in that. You had me testing it to see how it was working. So, so please feel free to start wherever you want to start. Even going back and getting your degree, because that's part of your testimony, because you were a non-traditional student. So you tell us as much as you like, and we'll start from there.
Absolutely. So I really appreciate the opportunity. It's kind of humbling when you said 20 years because it made me realize I am 45 years old, and it has been 20 years. That's crazy. That is literally
Time
crazy.
flies when you're having
It does. And now you see these grays, that little gray patch right there. So I really appreciate being here, and I appreciate you following and my story, because my story in a lot of ways is unique, and in some ways is not. So from Cincinnati, born and raised, graduated from high school with a ton of scholarships, went to UC on a full ride, College of Business, lost my scholarship, dropped out of school, came back when I was about 30 years old to complete my bachelor's degree. So actually graduated college in 2012. And it was just important to me just because my grandmother, education was important to her. So even after she had gone on, it was important for me to keep that promise. But the reason why that's important is because, my path in some ways are very traditional, and in ways they're not traditional. And I think all those things prepare me for elected office. So a lot of times, particularly women, we are really quick to think of why we're not qualified to do something, why we shouldn't do something. And respectfully to the gentleman on this call, a man will look at a job description, have 20% of the qualities or the experience and say, I'm perfect for it. A woman will have 80% and think she's not enough. So this is really not just like a testament to me, but a testament to the community I come from. So I went to UC, graduated from UC, College of Business, degree in international business. Actually started out in the corporate space and always loved politics, had my eye on politics. My greatest inspiration are two women, Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Jordan. I just admired them a lot growing up. I was not old enough to see either one of them in office, but I'm old enough to see when Barbara Jordan did a speech at the 92 Democratic National Convention. And I saw her, I was only 13 years old, but I saw her and I was like, my gosh, she looks like me, she talks like me, her hair is like mine, her skin is like mine. And I was just really inspired. And I didn't see me reflected in politics at that time. And it was really important. And the reason I ran for office, aside from the inspiration, is what I was finding was that there was a lot of people who understood community, but didn't really know politics. And there were people who really loved politics, but didn't understand community. And it was my opportunity to kind of marry both of those worlds. Very wonkish. If you talk with me, I love policy. Policy makes me happy. I get nerdy when it comes to policy. Um, and so I started working in politics, eventually ran for office, became the first openly gay woman elected to office in the city of Cincinnati, which I take a lot of pride in. But because it was important to me that my identity and who I am be reflected in the work that I did. So we did things in office like one of my proudest pieces of legislation was the salary history ordinance that we passed, was essentially banned companies from asking people what their prior salary was to base their future salary on it. That has a lot to do with, as we talk about economic and community development, people, capital, human capital, and things of that nature. Because what was happening was, as a city, we couldn't regulate the minimum wage, but what could we do to put to assist? Um, so I did that work, super excited about that work. I made a mistake in 2020. I was arrested and convicted of honest services wire fraud. And, I'm very open about it because it wasn't something I did intentionally, but it was wrong nonetheless. And I take responsibility for it. And then once you learn, like, okay, this is because there was not like the thing that bothers me most about my story or how people, when people tell my story, is they'll talk about like, it's an issue of bribery or, a politician who's corrupt, and none of those things are true about me. So much so that when I did my time, came home, I still wanted to be involved in service. And I was thinking about how could I still leverage my privilege, my community, my platform, my relationships to serve my community. And that's how I landed at the Center for Employment Opportunities. Center for Employment Opportunities is an amazing organization. And I love to say that we exclusively work with people who are justice impacted. And I take pride in that because usually people who have felonies on their records are usually excluded. So for us, we work exclusively with those who are justice impacted. And I would say most of my team, the staff I work with, are justice impacted, which makes a difference to our participants. As we think about reentry, how people are trying to, you know, pay their debt to society, whatever that is. But they go, they do time, and they come home, and the opportunities are few and far between. There's spaces that are exploitive to justice impacted people because they know they're a captive audience. So there's employers who pay folks, a wage that's not a thriving wage because they know that people who are trying to get those to level up both socially and economically have difficulties. So at the Center for Employment Opportunities, we try to foster a community where people feel welcome. I don't ask people what their conviction is. I don't care what people's convictions are. It's really about who you are today and what you want to do with your life. I think background checks are some of the worst things that happen to people because it's looking at who you used to be. And we need to be looking at who people are today. Sometimes it's surprising how people, I think they watch too much TV because they think that if they hire somebody who is justice impacted, it somehow makes their workplace unsafe. I think also part of the challenge of our work is that there are a lot of people who admit that the criminal legal system is very skewed racially, economically, but somehow we don't see that. We'll talk about that till the cows come home, and we know that our justice system targets, people of a certain demographic, lack of education. It's not a secret. It's not me trying to pull at your heartstrings. This is what the data tells us. But somehow, when people come home, we lose that empathy, understanding of what the criminal legal system means and how it has impacted people in our community. So that's why the most important thing that I do is not get people jobs. The most important thing I do is to help people feel safe. Um, and I am very privileged, and I try to explain to people my experience isn't representative of the people that are justice impacted. I had a lot of support when I was in prison. I had support when I came home. I had an attorney who was with me every step of the way. The folks who are coming into our doors to get help, they don't have support. They don't have um, the economic support. A lot of them are housing insecure. They're either couch surfing or they're just unhoused. And so we're trying to remove a lot of barriers, because once you get a job, if those barriers aren't removed, you're going to have trouble holding on to that job. Another thing that we do at CEO is, I don't believe just because you have a conviction on your record, and let me preface this by saying there's dignity in all work, but just because you have a conviction on your record shouldn't mean you should be relegated to manual labor. A lot of times, well, because you have a record, you should just take that warehouse job. You should take that dishwashing job. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs if that's what you want to do. But if you can do more, you have the talent to do more, the ambition to do more, those opportunities should be there for you. So I kind of resent some of the um, some of the narratives as it relates to being justice impacted. So I try to leverage, whatever capital I have left politically, the relationships I have, to help assist those who are interested in, like I said, not just economic mobility, but social mobility. That's really important. Confidence is a huge challenge for people when they come home. So as a society, I don't know, I just feel like I don't even like the term, second chance, because if you know some of the things I know and seeing some of the people I work with, some of the folks that come through our doors never even had a first chance. So I kind of veer to using fair chance language as opposed to second chance language. But it's not problematic or anything like that. But just to be quite honest with you, that's what I get to do. My story is, like I said, not representative. I share it but my story is not everybody else's story. I have a conviction, a felony on my record that I will never ever be able to expunge as the law states right now, and I'm okay with it, because one thing I don't worry about is relates to someone calling me a convicted felon or an ex-con or whatever is the derogatory terms that people use. Um, my grandma always taught me, it's not what people call you, it's what you answer to. So I choose, and I try to impart to the people I work with that they are greater than what happened. I ain't gonna say particularly convicted of what happened. They're greater than the mistake they made or the lapse of judgment. But I really want to, um, really let them know that who you are right now and what you want to do moving forward is all that really matters. And so I wish that we had uh, more folks, more organizations who were understanding of that. And I'll say this before I close: one of the things that really drives connection in the space of reentry is proximity. A lot of people aren't proximate to people who are just impacted. So this is, as my grandma would say, it's hard to hate up close. And so we really try to humanize and show people that, if you hire this person or you look at me, I'm justice impacted. You're not judging me. So why would you judge someone if they're justice impacted? So we try to drive proximity, because most employers, companies who are open to hiring people who have felonies on their records are because they themselves have a felony on their record, somebody in their family does. And so they know firsthand that a conviction doesn't automatically make you a bad person.
So one of the things, and I totally agree with you, even though Ohio has made a lot of strides, especially since 2012, to kind of deregulate instead of just across the board, they are looking at least, or started to look at, okay, is your conviction related to the job or industry that you're in? So even though that's still limited, at least a step in the right direction and still have a long ways to go. Um, there are different incentive programs that, and I know you're aware of, that the state of Ohio has through Jobs and Family Services, for hiring um, at-risk employees, right, or what was might be considered at risk. So one of the things that I find baffling is that so many employers still don't even know those baseline things. And so in our workforce development programming, um, not only are we looking at providing services for those employees or potential employees, but we're also looking at educating those businesses. Like, these are the current rules, these are the current things that you can do. Making the case that, someone who is just as impacted, especially if they're going through an organization such as yours, Office of Reentries and things like that, really, because you have those agencies as part of their network and their support, you're really getting additional free employment assistance programming, right? So we try to change that narrative and thought processes when it comes to things like that. So I look forward to being able to work with your organization. So can we talk about what is that experience with a person who is just as impacted that comes through your doors?
That is a great question. So for us, and let me say, we don't discriminate based on conviction. There's no conviction. I think for a lot of employers, and you'll find this to be the case, Amber, is that a lot of times that we have to work through conviction restrictions. So it's like I'll work with people who have felonies on their record, but not this record or not that record. So we accept people with, no matter what their convictions are. And so what makes us different than probably any other reentry program is that people who come through our doors, they're able to make money while they're training. So that we have contracts with ODOT, KYTC, which is like the ODOT equivalent across the river. And then we have the Port Authority. So they pay us monthly so that we can pay employees daily. And that's just, it's what we call transitional work. It's nothing permanent. It's just to satisfy putting money in their pocket. The requirement that we do have, they don't have to work on the transitional job group. The requirement that we do have is that they come in every week for job coaching and job development. So someone comes in the door, we kind of assess what we call job start readiness. Some people come in the door, they are job start ready right away. Some people it depends on how long they've been gone. And we've had people that come through our doors that have been gone for 47 years. And so, in terms of adapting to technology, um, they might not be ready as much as someone who has only been gone. Like me, I was only in prison for 11 months. When I went to prison, I had an iPhone 12. So we're on a iPhone 15 now. So there's not a huge lapse in technology, but I just had to say, we try to assess. And that's one thing we do, is that we don't have like a one size fits all approach to reentry. Like, who are you individually? What are your goals? And then job coaching and job training, that's essentially what we're trying to find out. What do you want to do? Like, what are your aspirations? Did you have some sort of vacation in prison? Do you want to do something different now? Educationally, where are you at? Like, do you have your GED? Do you aspire to do? So we're trying to assess those things and kind of almost like we're air traffic control. We're trying to get you on the track that works best for you. Meanwhile, we're talking with you about how to talk about your conviction in an interview. What does that look like? They might not ask you specifically like your conviction, but they might ask about a gap, in your resume. That's kind of how they get around that. How do you address those things? So that is really what we do. And then ultimately we're trying to place them in a job that both they like, with an employer who's very welcoming, because being an employer for someone who's just impacted, I'm not going to lie, it's different. Sometimes if someone's on probation or parole and they get that call that they have to go do a year analysis, they have to drop everything to go do that test. They can't say, oh, okay, I'll come tomorrow. And if they're on probation or parole, sometimes they got to go like immediately. So we're working with employers to see what that looks like, to talk about what that looks like. Even after we place people, there's still job coaching that has to take place. Sometimes there's different scenarios. We're thinking like, before you quit, come talk to us. Let's figure out what's going on. And to the employer who we have a relationship with, we're also saying, before you fire this person, let's figure out what we can do together. Let's figure out, if this person's late, oh, they don't have you know, they don't have the bus passes. Oh, well, let's fix that. You know what I mean? Like we're trying to get to the root of, or just be like, it's just not a good placement, and that happens too. So I love what we do at CEO. Right now, our average wage is $16.50 an hour in our placements. I would love to get that closer to 18 or 20, which is my goal. But statistically, people who are just impacted are paid lower. So we try to keep that in mind and almost lobby for higher wages for our participants as well. So the benefit of being with us is that we have a duality in that we're establishing a relationship with both the participants and with the employers, so that we can kind of you know, walk the fine line of, you know, making sure we're building a relationship with both, because we want the relationship to be as fruitful as humanly possible. Because if this person does well, and you know, that's an opportunity for us to place more folks who are interested. Also, we do vocational training too. I didn't talk about that as much. So right now we have a couple people who are going through CDL training. We do that for free. Everything at CEO is no cost. We have construction, vocational training. We're establishing relationships with like Building Futures through the Urban League, the SOAR program. So it's not just about a job, it's also about like a pathway, a career way, and that contributes to the social and economic mobility of that person.
Now, speaking of construction, you know, when this reentry space really kind of opened up, like you said, it was you either went into construction or janitorial, right? And you might be able to get into, you know, that manufacturing, warehousing. Um, and a lot of that had to do with those were the employers. Those were employers where you could at least have overtime, something to get viable um, wages. So I like, Tamaya, the way that CEO works to um, do these non-traditional pathways and partnerships with businesses. So once again, like I said in beginning, CED, marriages you want to be in, right? So you're making that a marriage and a true partner um, in this, and you're changing mindsets as you do it. So you ought to be commended on that. Um, with a lot of this training and case management, there's a lot of different funding. Funding is a little bit higher, right? So how do you all navigate that to provide the services that you do so that they stay accessible?
So one of the ways, not, I think I'll probably just keep my camera off since I'm walking, but one of the ways that we do that is, well, through JFS, our participants, we are funded through SNAP, and that's really important. So we get a lot of our funding. The bulk of our funding actually comes through SNAP, other workforce development opportunities. We also get our funding, as I was saying earlier, through our contracts with um, the company, the partners I named earlier. But then we also do a lot of fundraising, because as we're removing barriers, one of the things we also assist with, which are the greatest barriers, are housing and transportation. So, and when I say transportation, specifically driver's license, that's like a huge web for people. So if someone is in our program, they're showing a commitment to the work, they're showing a commitment to themselves, we come alongside them and we'll pay, you know, reinstatement fees and help them for their driver's license fees. So a lot of the we seek private dollars to help us do that. When people have housing, we can't pay for apartments, but we if someone's facing eviction, they have some difficulty, the ability to be able to step in and help. That's why employment isn't just the only thing that we do, although it's a major thing. The really major, the most important work that we do is just really providing that support, because when a lot of people come home, Amber, they don't really have any sort of support, and until they, but it's so easy when um, you're not making the money that you should make, or you're not making the money to sustain yourself, to revert and do things that you maybe would have done earlier, if you don't think that people are counting on you and looking at you to do great things.
Well, Eric, I just saw your comment. great minds think alike. So you kind of answered his question. And when I asked the question, I didn't know that he had put that in there, but he had said, amazing work. Thank you. Question, how do you fund internships, jobs, etc.? And that's what I had asked. But he also has another question. He says, do you have a story to share, a participant that utilized CEO services and achieved their potential?
Man, I have so many stories to tell, and
Well, give us a couple.
you can't see my face, but I'm smiling so hard. So, the Clifton Cultural Arts Center just opened in Clifton, right? Brand new building, and they specifically reached out to us for assistance. And we had a gentleman who had come in our doors, and he came in our doors. Really, he was like, I was broken. His daughter had asked him for $10, and he couldn't even afford to give his daughter $10. But he was very talented. Oh my God, this guy is such a talented electrician. And at the same time that Clifton Cultural Arts Center reached out to us, Leslie Mooney, specifically knowing that we work with just impacted people, it's been a match made in heaven. He's been there since January. And he was like, Miss T, they gave me keys. Like, you know what I mean? Like the fact that he's like, I have an office and people report to me. And this is a man with probably maybe 6 felonies on his record. You know what I mean? Just the fact that, they were going to essentially throw him away. But when I say they, I mean society. But in us, through Cultural Arts Center, he's been gainfully employed, loving what he does. Another gentleman, gosh, I have so many. A young man came to us and he was just like, I hate this. I don't want to be doing this work. This is stupid. My probation officer told me to be here. We're like, hey, you don't have to be here if you don't want to, but just give us a chance. We'll get you through. This young man came and owed hundreds of dollars in fees on his driver's license. Was like, I could just sell weed. This is cool. Like, this is cute what y'all doing, but I could just sell weed. And that's what he did. He said, this is cute, but I could just sell weed. I'm good. He has a job now. He works for 3CDC and is killing it right now, doing amazing job. Recently got a raise and a bonus. You know what I mean? Like these are people who, again, just having people, not saying that, just having people that believe in them. We have a young woman that came to us, and this particular woman, she had her CDLs, which is amazing. She came to us with her CDLs, but could not get a job anywhere. And she came to us like having CDLs, but she had a robbery charge on her record. Not only did it was like Metro and another company, a logistics company, got into a bidding war for her. And she couldn't believe with her robbery that 2 companies were fighting for her. You know what I mean? Like she was like, well, Miss T, they're offering me $24 an hour and this place is offering me 26. Like, you know what I mean? But, she had a robbery charge that was, I think 3 years old. She's thriving. So it's like people who come to us and like, they have the skill set. Sometimes they have the skill set. Sometimes they don't. But the point is, I tell them, I said, if you stick with me, we'll get you there. You know what I mean? We're going to hear some doors are going to be closed in our face sometimes. We're going to hear some no's, but if you believe in me, we can get you there. And I think for us, it's building trust with the participants and just letting them know like they're hanging there with us. We can get them there. And most times we can. I'm excited about that.
Lisa, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm just the success stories. Are they printed anywhere? I'd like to read more about the success stories.
Sure. So we have a newsletter. We changed the names because we just for confidentiality and stuff like that. But I will make sure you get
Okay.
our newsletters that tell our stories because you know what? Actually, in July, Lisa, do you live in Cincinnati?
No, and that's what I said. I live in Toledo, and I don't think we have I don't think there's a location in Toledo, is there?
No,
of the CEO. Okay.
No, there's been talks. Right now, we're just in Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati.
Okay.
There's been some budding Toledo talks, but nothing I don't think has substantiated. But we have every quarter we have a celebration for participants, people who are getting jobs, kept them, just done outstanding things. I was gonna say we're having one coming up in July. I would love to invite you down where you can see, and we get up there, we stand in there, and we tell the success stories of like, we just don't say here's your award. Because they bring their families out and their kids, and for most of the people, I'm just being honest with you, this is the closest thing to a graduation they've had because they didn't graduate from high school. So when they bring their families out and their kids, and they're on stage next to me, and I'm not just handing them their certificate, but I'm talking about how they were in the program, how it was hard for them, and the smile, how they're beaming, and one of the first things one participant told me, she's like, I can't believe my boys are so proud of me, because she was gone for half their lives. You know what I mean? So there's no substitute for that, and that's why I say sometimes I can't believe I get to do this work. You know what I mean? It's not like that's like I can't believe I get to come to work every day and do this work.
Well, Eric has put it out in the atmosphere that and telling Lisa, because they're both in the northwest part of Ohio, that it sounds like a role for us to nurture that Toledo CEO conversation. So they are offering their hand to help further that conversation along as they can. And also, I will make sure that I give you everyone's email address so we can all be on your newsletter list as well.
Absolutely.
And then you already know we're going to be meeting on what we can do down here in Cincinnati. So, yeah. So let's back up a little bit. Even and before the reentry, you did a lot of work in the grassroots area, small nonprofits, things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that skill set has, even though I know the answer, I just want you to say it, how that skill set has helped you in your current role?
So excellent. So what Amber was alluding to earlier, and I'm sitting down now. So I can turn my camera. I'm sitting at my gate now. Hold on. Turn my camera. I was walking to my gate. So what Amber was alluding to earlier was this work I did with a consulting team called Design Impact. And so Design Impact, essentially at that time we used human-centered design. They've kind of changed to do like co-design, but at the time we did essentially we used design thinking to help with issues around like social justice. So the very same process that you would use to design a chair or a phone or a cup, we use that, but on issues of social justice. And so what was happening was a lot of organizations, especially small organizations, were like running into these issues. And sometimes, as we're taught from when we're kids, we're very linear thinkers, like 2 + 2 is 4. And so sometimes we're not comfortable because we're such linear thinkers and we've been trained to be linear thinkers. We're uncomfortable with ambiguity. And so sometimes we're trying to figure something out, especially when there's pressure of like hitting KPIs or deadlines. You feel a stress to create something, even if it's not effective. And so what design thinking does is kind of like just kind of actually to take a step away from the process. Now think about scope. Think about what you're trying to do, what assumptions you're making, how to really dial back and get to the root of what you're doing. At the same time, engaging the people who are most impacted. So not going into a corner and figuring out what to do with the community and not engaging the community. Because what we were also finding was that there was engagement, but it was more like tokenism. They were like doing it to check a box, not actually having them side by side with leadership making decisions. Because a lot of organizations, regardless of size, are scared to relinquish that power. So that work was instrumental, and even how I did policy. So I did that work before I ran for office, and that had a huge influence on how we did legislation. When we created legislation, we sat with people who are most impacted, and we learned, and we had to understand the humility of while I'm a legislator and I have quote unquote power. These folks know more about this issue than I ever will. So let me be humble and learn, because politicians on all levels, I went to school for business. My degree is in business. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a huge scientist, but somehow we're making decisions on legislation that has to do with these topics, but we're not subject matter experts. And so that was a huge influence on how we did legislation, getting people in a room and talking with people about, you know, why this matters. And I think a lot of times with legislation, when you don't do that, you come up with stuff with what we like to call unintended consequences. I'll give you an example. For me, I remember when a few years, you're talking about 2018, when immigration was, very strong in Ohio, and they were trying to snare people, trying to replicate what was happening in Arizona. And I was so fired up. I was like, you know what? This is, BS. We need to move these camps and get, immigration out of Cincinnati. And I was like fired up about it because I was really pissed off. But then what happened was when we talk to people who are immigrants, they were like, we love where your heart is. We love that you're fighting for us. But if you take these centers out of Cincinnati, you're going to put them in Butler County, they're going to be further for us to get to see our loved ones. So while I was like fired up and they admired my passion and my compassion for them, they were like, slow down, speed racer. Like, let's really. And so that was a lot of legislation for me. It's like, I feel a certain way, I think a certain way. And I just don't believe that one person is the holder of all good ideas. And so that's what really design thinking was for me. When I took my oath of office, when I was sworn in city council, we took our oath on a folding chair to pay homage to Shirley Chisholm, who said if they don't give a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. So I took my oath on a folding chair because that symbolized for me how we were going to do our jobs. I didn't, not that I don't respect religion and people who are religious, but I didn't want to take my oath on a Bible because I'm going to represent people who aren't Christians. I didn't want to take my oath on the Quran or a Torah or anything like that. No disrespect. I wanted to symbolize how we were going to approach legislation. And that was really because of human-centered design.
So one of the things that we're working on as a team is resilient communities. So that was another reason why I wanted to bring that up. We had some community coaching training and hometown collaborative initiative training that we've done. And Eric actually has an international economic development and micro business development background.
Awesome.
And he's worked a lot with small businesses in Appalachia, Ohio. Ambrose comes from the legal side, right, and legal aid, and business development, and worked his way in. Lisa, I don't know her whole background, but I know she has a strong workforce development background as well as a strong nonprofit background, right, and that the community organizing and the just empowerment of people, right, and mine isn't the whole gamut, whatever, but um, so we're which is the beauty of our team, because as we are building out our actual program, and when we have it totally built out, I want to send it to you because I want you to kind of review it. So I hope you'll do that. Just kind of give us some quick comments. But it takes all these different perspectives and diversity of thought in order to like you say, be um, nimble enough to adjust based on what the communities actually need. And each community is going to be different. Some might be in the larger cities, might just be a neighborhood or two, who have a common cause. But in a rural area, it might be a whole township, a whole county, a whole city. We don't know, but we're designing it so that no matter what that community looks like, or it might be a good group of organizations, right, with the same type of organizations, that they can come through this resilient communities and make their communities better. So that was another reason why I was asking that information.
I love that, Amber, just because I think what I found as a consultant was a lot of organizations, one of their biggest challenges is scope. Because if you ask someone, hey, I want to solve world hunger, right? And that's a very admirable thing. Who's going to tell you not to do it? But what resources do you have to actually do that? Maybe you should start. And for some, they have the resources to start there, and that's fine. But for some, they fail because they fall short because maybe the scope should have been neighborhood first, get that system, get a process down for that, and expand out. So that's one of the things when I was teaching Studio C with my colleague Sarah Corlett, was helping organizations figure out what was the right scope for them.
What was the right bandwidth? So,
Mm-hmm.
and the definition I gave in the beginning when we started the show today was what we have to recognize our bandwidth, right? And what resources we have so we can roll things out, because you want to have good impact. You don't want to roll it out so big and you can't meet those standards and then you fail. And you didn't have to, right?
Right.
So that's the beauty of community and economic development work as well. Ambrose, did you have any questions about reentry, anything? I'm not used to you being quiet. You're quiet today.
I know. I guess one question I had, if we go back to the reentry work a bit. Could you share, Tamaya, with us some of the like the demographics or characteristics of some of the employers or companies that you work with to pair the individuals with?
That's a great question. So we have a lot of them, honestly, we have a few. There are not as many small businesses as I would like, and that's something we want to work on. But most of them are medium to larger businesses. Some corporations, and the corporations are a little bit difficult because their policies are kind of set, and they're not as equitable. Because say they have like an assessment that they give everybody, that assessment might not be fitting for our participants. Because to be quite honest with you, most people in our program, they don't have um, a high school diploma. And it's not because of intelligence, it's because, you know, at the time they were doing things in high school wasn't necessarily for them. You know what I mean? Um, but we work with, like I said, medium to large organizations, a few nonprofits, most of them are for profits. I'll share with you some of them are like Kroger, uh, knock on wood, Procter and Gamble. Oh, Amber Ashton told me to tell you what's up. Ashton from Dayton Equity Center. I met with him this morning. We're partnering with them on some stuff. So he told me to tell you what's up. When I told
Yeah,
him I was going to be with
that's
him
my
today,
buddy.
he said the same thing about you. So we're partnering with them on some initiatives with Procter and Gamble. Knock on wood. But 3CDC, which is an organization here in Cincinnati, Apex Carpentry. Uh, let's see, I know Embassy Suites, Matry Brewing. Um, I don't know, like any, we're have knock on wood, happily, hopefully
Mhm.
have a partnership with Public Ally. So we're trying to really meet participants where they are as it relates to the interests that they have.
Mhm.
I would
So
even
do
reach
you?
out. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I had a follow up. So do you find that there are within these companies that there are sort of folks who are really pushing or advocating for the company to um, to be more open and receptive, or is it like a company uh, policy or a company direction, or is there just like a cheerleader in the company who really advocates and brings, you know,
That,
pushes that inside?
that's an awesome question. Most times it's because I'm an advocate. Maybe went to because I think even like at SHRM, which is the National Organization for Human Resources, there's been interest there in reentry and second and fair chance hiring. So sometimes I'll go and see like a presentation and it'll pique their interest, and then they go back to their companies and say, how can we make our policies a little relaxed to hire people just impacted. Sometimes it's because one of our companies, Apex Carpentry, that we work with, I think his brother was formerly incarcerated, so there's an interest. Like he puts himself like, okay, my brother, this happened to my brother. He was a good guy. He had trouble finding work. So I think it's a mixture of both. For the larger ones, it's usually someone, a champion within. And so for some of the smaller ones, it's just because they know that people deserve a second chance and they should have a second chance.
So I have a couple of potential employers, so I'll talk to you offline that you may be able to add partnerships,
Okay.
list of your partnerships with, um, and a couple of individuals who are champions just in general. So I'll get that to you. Um, so my other question was, um, when you're talking about construction, we know that that's still a good old boy network. It still has the flavor of 1950s. Some things, racism and things are very overt. And a lot of times when you work in construction, people think you're just working in the cities, but actually most of the time you're out in these rural areas, you're kind of siloed, and they may call you some words that you want to rise up. So do you all uh, kind of manage or give them tools to navigate that kind of space so that there's less turnover?
Unfortunately, depending on where they were, most of the prison, most of the institutions are in rural spaces. So they actually have already experienced that. If you think about it for a second,
Mhm.
there are not very many prisons in cities. They're usually in like, Marysville or,
London.
London, Ohio, like these random places. So unfortunately, they already have that experience with that type of atmosphere. However, one of the things we do try to help them navigate and as best we can and simulate as best we can is, you know, conflict resolution, anger management and things like that. Again, like a lot of it's in theory because we're not going to be, calling them names and doing that on our in our program. However, it is our hope that through our training specifically targeted at anger management and conflict resolution and how to make decisions like decision making. We take them through a lot of scenarios like that, and it is our hope that when the opportunity arises, that they're able to let their training or their dispositions come through. Most times it works for us, but some I mean we're humans, so sometimes it doesn't, and we just hope for an opportunity to train on it if we can. That's why we like to work with like LIUNA, which is a labor union here, or we try to work with union programs so that there's a little bit of a buffer, if you will.
Eric had another comment. Um, well, a couple things. So he says, thank you for that design work back when we were talking before. I think this is our biggest barrier to change. We aren't asking the right questions of the right people.
Mm-hmm.
CEOs are asking what will get, CBOs or community-based organizations are asking what will get funded. And that moves the whole conversation in unimpactful directions.
Yep.
Then he also says he has a question for you. Has CEO thought about starting a social enterprise, maybe a co-op that could build no expectation? You're doing great work. He's just purely just curious, and that he knows some reentry programs that have bakeries and things like that. Have you all thought about that social enterprise piece directly?
We are essentially a social enterprise, but not like a business in a sense that you're talking about. But that is a great idea. I don't know if they've given thought to that, but I do like the idea of that. So yeah, I'm happy to suggest that because I do like that. But it's essentially run like a social enterprise with the contracts, with the the private and the public crew partners. So we work with only public crew partners. We don't have any private ones in Cincinnati. They had one before my time with Cook Foods up in Fairfield, um, and but it was their shop. It wasn't our own outfit.
So are there any other, because we're coming up on our time, are there any other comments or questions that anyone has?
Well, I just wanted to follow up on what the comment and question that Eric just asked, Tamaya. That sort of brings to mind the company Hot Chicken Takeover.
Mm-hmm.
And have you all engaged with them at all, or is that a similar is that a social enterprise that fits to the mission of CEO?
Maybe so. We have an office in Columbus. I think that's where it's located. So I don't know if there's been talks with the CEO office in Columbus for that. I don't think we have one in Cincinnati. But if we did, I think that would be interesting because I have been the hot chicken takeover and I think it's really cool how they work. But um, I don't know if they've had those talks, but I'm willing to ask our regional director who manages all of Ohio because that's a good. I mean, I like the social enterprise component. I really never thought of it like that, so that's really something to think about and to pry into.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to give in that vein, I'm going to put in the extension plug. Think about urban agriculture. Because you don't need as much space. You have us as extensions, as us in Ohio State University, who are the two extension universities. So between the two of us, you could have a lot of resources to make that happen keep your costs down. But at the end of the day, they're learning a skill that they're going to use because food, we're always going to need food, right? And it might help with their transition back too, because now they're getting healthy foods and things as that. But also, it's also can be a micro business for them, no matter what industry they're getting their work experience in. So that's something we can talk about. So I had to put that plug in. Can't go the whole time without talking about extension. So people think it's just agriculture, but as you see, it's business development, it's home ec, it's health and wellness, it's youth programming. So it could even be the you have something with the adults, but with that urban ag, you can bring with their families and kids. So there's some organic bonding going on as they transition back. So there's mental health as all of those components that would be supportive of the work that you do. So that's something we could talk about too when we meet. But if anybody does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, well, I truly, truly thank you, Tamaya, for joining us today. You're always, a powerful storyteller. I'm still waiting on you to come out with your book. See, I didn't forget we had that conversation 10 years ago.
I'm actually writing. A situational comedy instead.
Okay, as long as you write, because you're an excellent writer.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that.
And just thank you for sharing time, and you're traveling, you're in the airport, so
yeah, I was
we
gonna say
appreciate
I apologize to you. So I have you guys. Let me just share with you. I lost my ID yesterday, so I'm traveling with this, the paper ID they give you, and because of that, they had to go through all of my stuff and pat me down. So that's what I knew. I was already pushing it. That just held me up. So I do apologize to y'all for being late.
Oh, no, you're fine, no worries. But just want to thank you for joining us and enlightening us, and I look forward to having a formal partnership and collaboration with CEO. I had to play on that in the title today.
I saw that.
So truly appreciate you, and if you have any closing comments, then we will close out for today.
I just really appreciate the interest. And like I said, a lot of the work that we do is like narrative shifting. So, when you hear someone use the term ex-con felon, very politely, maybe ask them to use a different term.
Awesome. And we have a couple more weeks in this series of Women in Reentry. We'll have Jamie G. from Montgomery County Office of Reentry. You may remember her when she was in Cincinnati. She's a trailblazer. And then we'll have Judge Janaea Trotter Bratton on the close out the series. So
I'm partial, but she's my favorite judge.
I know. So I had to let you know she'll be coming on in a couple weeks. And then after that, we'll be shifting over into some more business development and affordable housing, some of your other areas of interest. So I will keep you updated on all of that. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you, Tanya, for joining us today. And we will see everybody next week, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here online. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice
Bye.
to meet y'all.